Good morning. Stan Stahl with Secure the Village. We're here for our monthly webinar. Today's Inserting Risk into the Enterprise Vocabulary with Stevan Bernard. Real talk, real people in the trenches, on the front lines, what's going on. That's the whole structure of these. If you've got questions, please put them in the chat box and we'll follow up either in real time or at the end of Steve's talk, depending on kind of context and what we're doing at the time. Today, we're going to be discussing cybersecurity in the broad context of risk management, things like enterprise risk management on the one side and all the way to systemic risk on the other. The whole point being that cyber risk is just one of many different flavors of risk. And so it's important to look not just at each risk in its own silo, but consider the aggregate risk that comes from their combination. We've been living this for over a year. COVID's pushed people to work from home. Working from home has made information risk more challenging, if you will. And it's also brought out more cyber criminals as they're taking advantage of the work from home from COVID. This is an example of the kinds of circumstances that we've got and that Steven and I are going to talk about. Steve's a real expert in this broader context. And as you'll hear and see as we move along, he's got the scars to prove it. He's got that kind of a background. You'll be delighted as you hear from Steve. But first, just a few words about Secure the Village. First, we are a community-based response to the cybercrime and privacy crisis. The whole idea is it takes the village to secure the village, from the boardroom to the living room. And with that, I want to play our new video. I'm like really excited by this. I think it's fabulous. So enjoy it.
Cybersecurity isn't simple. So if you think you're about to watch a cute video with bouncy music that tells you how what you thought was hard is actually easy and what you thought was complicated is actually just like 1, 2, 3, rest assured, this isn't it. Because cybersecurity isn't simple. And what we do weaves together law, technology, risk management, governance, public policy, education, political philosophy, psychology, and even questions of freedom and of war and peace. Cybersecurity isn't simple, but the values that motivate us are. The value that says we should treat others' information as we would like our information to be treated. That cybersecurity is an urgent civic duty for the 21st century citizen. And the value that says none of us is as smart as all of us. And that's why we're getting everyone involved, building bridges between those who dedicate their lives to cybersecurity and helping everyday citizens complete that last mile, transforming our neighbors into powerful cyber guardians. Cybersecurity isn't simple, but the values that motivate us are. And our values say that there's a seat at the table for anyone with something to contribute to the global exchange of knowledge we're building at Secure the Village. Because from the boardroom to the living room, it takes a village to secure the village.
So that's what we're about. Now you know, if not already. So with that, as I said, this is our monthly webinar. We meet the second Thursday of every month from 10 to 11 with stories from the front lines. Our intent is to give real world guidance, but to do it from a big picture perspective, as you're going to hear from today. And that's the introduction to Stevan Bernard, Chief Executive and Founder, Risk Consultancy Bernard Global. Steve, welcome. It's a real pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Dan.
Super. So I'm going to stop my sharing. Steve, you want to pick up your deck? Go ahead, start sharing your stuff, and then we'll jump off. There you go.
Got it?
We got it.
All right. Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to join you guys today. And I tried to put this program together in a way that it'll have some lasting meaning. So I did probably a few more PowerPoints than I would do normally. But that way, it'll be a good reference for you. And the other thing that I thought was a little bit unique is it's not just going to be about cybersecurity. However, most of what I'm going to talk about in one way or the other links back to cybersecurity anyway, all things being connected, and you'll see why. So, and then at the end, I've got some, I think, really good tips and links that you'll want to take a closer look at and explore. So, I wanted to start with some thoughts on risk. What is it, and how do you determine, what it is? Because we're typically overwhelmed by all the things that we hear that we should worry about, and we really shouldn't worry about all of it. We should worry about some of it, more so than all of it. However, I'll have to jump in and say that when I was at Sony Pictures, to be honest, we never planned to go dark worldwide. And we did in 50 countries when we had the cyber attack with the intent to destroy by a nation state. And so even though we didn't plan for it, we did have some good planning and a good team, and we had convergence, and that allowed us to come together and to actually overcome it. But I think worst case scenario planning is not a bad idea. And then ERM, the enterprise risk management, I wanted to put it in there because the entire enterprise is affected by and should be involved in risk management. Risk management is just how you manage your business and how you anticipate things happening that could be disruptive. And then what do you do about it? And assigning roles and responsibilities and so on. And the types of risks that we're facing today are so many, but I put a few in here. I probably could have filled the page with types of risk.
I think you did fill the page.
Yeah. Well, and there's more coming.
More. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then when you think about types of risks, then go right into what are some of the factors that are affecting risk. So the globalization, digitalization, automation, climate, shifting workforce, burnout, skills shortages, misinformation, cybercrime, the speed of change, pandemics, naivety, and again, I can go on and on. But I think if you look at each one of those and just take a moment and think about it, ask yourself how might this affect you and how might it affect your business? And then, what do you think you should do about it, if anything? As I said, some of this is more important to you than other things. Some of it's just a little overwhelming and too much. The one thing I would say about it, though, is, every day I wake up and I go online and I start reading. And I know, Stan, you do, and a lot of your clients do. And that is to just stay on top of what the heck is going on out there. Both from, bad stuff and good stuff. Things we should worry about and things maybe we don't have to worry as much about anymore. But I'm very, very focused on the horizon. And I think we have to be. And if you don't do it, then maybe you ought to have somebody who does it for you. And then let them help you sift through the minutia and make sense out of it. Really important.
Yeah.
So let's see here. Let's go on. I wanted to talk a moment about two terms that you may or may not have heard of. One is VUCA, and I'll talk about VUCA in a moment. It describes the world that we live in up until recently. Volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. Okay. The next one, and more current, is called BANI. And it's describing the world in a different way, and I'll explain to you why. Both of these are good, lenses to look through when you're considering what's going on out there. So VUCA was created actually out of the U.S. Naval War College in about 1991. And it was to deal with accelerated change, disruption, post-Cold War, Think about what was, on their plate in 1991 compared to what's on our plate in 2021. A huge shift. Why? What's happened? One thing that's happened is digitalization. Another one is, with that, globalization. The world is a much smaller place with many more people and many more people connected. So I think VUCA, was a good way to look at things. Volatility, your investments must match the risk. Uncertainty, change is possible but not a given. Complexity, yeah, a lot of variables, and ambiguity. But let me jump over to Banny. So I think Banny is in many minds an upgrade from VUCA. Banny is much more current. And there's a couple of things I'd say here about it that make it more, I think, relative. Something that I also wanted to include here, I saw recently from the Davos Forum founder, he's referring a lot to the great reset of capitalism as being a necessary move. A move from material goods to being much more aware of people's well-being and having greater empathy. And I think we're going to have to see that happen in society. I think we're going to have to see it happen in business. We've got to start paying more attention to the people that we're responsible for, and opening doors for communication and really addressing individual needs and problems and issues where they may not have anywhere else to go. Government today is less able than ever to deal with all the issues they have to deal with. And so I see business having to assume more responsibility in that regard. Another thing that Banny brings, I think, is a renewed emphasis on the term resilience, meaning, you're like the rubber ball. You come bouncing back. It doesn't matter what knocks you down, you pick yourself back up. But you don't just do that. You have to plan for it. And being resilient is really an end product of your preparedness, your response, anticipation, planning, all of that. Otherwise, like I said, you may not recover. And then I think another one is that the purpose of a company today really needs to be geared towards all stakeholders. Everyone who in some way is invested in the company, which includes employees, shareholders, third parties. And I'm going to get into third parties in a little bit. Then linearity. Stan, you and I talked about linearity yesterday a little bit, and it's nice to follow a linear model because it's one step, right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot. But linearity, I think we've got to offset it more today and going forward by being more flexible and anticipating and being willing to take a few more risks. We just have to. We got to get off that train a little bit. COVID-19 really, I think, helped us understand how important that would be in changing the whole work model. Where do we work from? Do we need to go into the office? Or if I'm a company that has no website, I have no connectivity. Well, guess what? I do now, because that was the only way I could survive COVID. And COVID, again, flattening the curve, that's a goal. We're not there yet. But it is a goal. And you could also say it's a war against linearity. So anyway, some thoughts on
that's such an important point, Steve, as you and I talked about yesterday. Both resilience and linearity, to me, kind of flow together in that we've got this innate, I think it's maybe part of our DNA that everything's linear. If it's rising, it's going to continue rising. And yet what we see is not just that it may or may not rise, but that we've got in our hands the power to do something about it, the power to keep a rising curve from continuing to rise, the opportunity to flatten the curve. We're the nonlinear agents in here. When we think about resilience, If we do nothing, bad stuff happens and the consequences follow. If we're prepared, the bad stuff happens and we're more in control of the outcome that can happen.
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah, you're right, Stan. I don't think we can emphasize enough how important that is. So, so on this risk conversation today, I was doing a cybersecurity program for a very, very large company, and I did it, and they liked it well enough. They said, you keep talking about breaking this down into functional areas. Excuse me. And we'd like you to do our finance department. So I did it. And then they wanted me to do the legal department. And then they wanted me to do HR. And then they wanted me to do their internal audit function. And in the internal audit group, I had 40 people on the call just from their internal audit department. There were a few from outside because they had in and out. But when I did it, I wanted to do a little research on it. And I wanted to get kind of in the mindset of an internal auditor. What am I thinking about going forward? What am I worried about? So I found the Institute of Internal Auditors for 2 years in a row now have done a survey of very senior level people in corporations. They call it On Risk. So there was an On Risk 2020 and an On Risk 2021. And it was, what are you worried about? What are you thinking about? What's going to really drive your business in this new year? Understanding what all the issues are that you have to deal with. So no surprise, cybersecurity was at the top because I'm sure most of, if not all of these companies were connected, if you will. And some of the issues there that they hit on was work from anywhere. It's no longer just work from home. It's work from anywhere. Increasing connectivity, the strain on the IT department, the sophistication of the attacker, criminal impunity, foreign countries' safe harbors, the naivety of the workforce, automation. Again, the list could be very long there, but cybersecurity, and I'm going to spend more time on this later, but that was, I'm glad to see, was one that they really felt they had to keep their eye on. And right there with it, no surprise again, business continuity and crisis management. The problem with it is that so many companies, even today, don't have true business continuity and crisis management and crisis response programs. They'll deal with it when it happens or if it happens, but otherwise it's somebody else's problem. That's not how you're going to survive something that is, offsetting to your business, whatever that may be. It doesn't have to be just a cyber attack. It can be a tornado, a fire, an explosion, sabotage. The list is long again. But being prepared, and it doesn't mean that you got to spend, days and weeks and months doing this, and that you've got to build a whole department around it. It means you got to sit down at a table with a few people that represent functions and say, what would you do? And have that conversation and make it real. Mm-hmm. So again, important. And certainly important on the whole cybersecurity front as well.
Yeah. The whole point, Steve, just again, it's information security, business continuity, incident response, all of those things start in the conversation. They start with the things you and I are doing right here, and then taking it in. Let's sit down and talk like reasonable people. What are we going to do if? That conversation.
Right. And
spot on.
I think also, Stan, especially, if you're a publicly traded company, the expectation that you will do this is there. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, you may not survive it. And guess what? Here come the litigators, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, and then let's go to the next one, which is, belongs near the top. Third parties, the decreased ability of organizations to select and monitor these relationships. Systemic risk. is high, meaning linked. In some way, your risk extends beyond the internal workings of your organization. Why is that? Because you let people connect. You let people in. You broaden access. And you have to do your business in a lot of different ways, right? And that's okay. And if you have a really good program that does a couple things we mentioned already, good for you. But let me ask you, does your third-party provider have a program that's anywhere near as good as yours? Or when you bring them in, are they just bringing risk with themselves? And then how do you audit that? How do you determine? And I mean, at Sony Pictures, I won't tell you the number, but we had thousands and thousands of third parties that we worked with all over the world. And we had a vetting program, but we didn't have enough people, honestly. No company has enough people. So you've got to find an automated way to validate your third-party partners and providers and even help them get better. Here's another one, board information. Relevant, real-time. How do you get it? How do they have some assurance that what they see, what they hear is information they can make critical decisions on going forward? And whether you have a threat intelligence, a threat hunter program or not, lots of other companies have it and they offer it.
Steven, say that last thing again. You just broke up for a moment. Steven, you're freezing. Are you there? Oh, shoot. It looks like we've temporarily lost Steve. Hopefully he will connect back in just a moment. While he's off, what he was talking about with boards, we see as so fundamental in this that with things like CCPA as an example, companies getting sued more when there's a breach, that they did not have reasonable security practices. And in that context, the corporate shield, plaintiffs' attorneys are trying to break the corporate shield and hold board members personally liable for an incident. Here comes Steven back. So you're back?
I am. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, not a problem. Well, you were gone. I took the dead airspace as an opportunity to mumble something. I was talking about the board situation. The board's getting sued far more frequently now than they were pre-CCPA, let's say, which just opens up a whole can of worms, if you will, on the subject of reasonableness. If you want to get your PowerPoint back up,
I think you'll have to enable me to do that again.
have to do that again.
Screen sharing.
Let's cancel that. Let's go here, back to panelists, make you a co-host once again. Here now. You should have that opportunity now. Again, Steve.
Oh, it took me right back to where I collapsed.
Perfect. Yeah.
Sorry about that, everybody.
Yeah. As I say, I mumbled a few things just to, yeah, so it wasn't completely dead air time for talking about board stuff, but you'd already moved on to, I think, sustainability as you were.
Yeah, one thing you may or may not have heard from me on board information is that, whether you're able to provide that to your board or your C-suite, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that there are companies out there that offer this today. that can really help you focus the lens on what you should be looking at and do that. So sustainability, I talked about climate change earlier. Wow, it's a huge issue. And companies that are not thinking about or going green in the face of society, shareholders, employees, your ability to attract and retain, and ultimately to win over incentives from a tax standpoint and energy usage and all of that. We all have to do more. And so I just can't emphasize enough how important it is to be green and to really to illustrate that. So if you've got a website, be proud of it. Let people know what your position is on various things. That I think is a big thing and an important thing. And obviously, it was a part of this survey result. Disruptive innovation. Status quo, no, let's get past status quo and really be disruptive. Let's, just because that's the way we've always done it is the answer you get in a meeting. Boy, that's the wrong answer. You're not going to be able to move fast enough with the changing technologies if you don't, continually disrupt and look at what others are doing and why and how. Regulatory risk. Boy, there's a lot coming. The White House executive order on cybersecurity, I think it's due next month for all branches of government. They're going to have to really tighten up their cybersecurity programs. Mm-hmm. With DoD, you see the CMMC certification, and that's probably going to begin to happen in the new year once they get out and start to audit their partners. And these are private sector partners doing business with the government that are going to have to meet new standards. Mm-hmm. And then you've got the SEC, I think, perhaps even this month, is going to start to take a much stronger position on incident reporting as it relates to cybersecurity. And they're going to take a look at whether or not you were half asleep or you were just a victim of something that you couldn't otherwise avoid. So there's a lot to that. OFAC and FinCEN, if you're paying ransomware, you better pay attention to those two areas. Who's going to get the money? Because there's a list. And that list says those people better not be getting it or you're financing terrorism and criminality. Economic and political volatility, oh boy, we've seen a bunch of it. And we're going to see more all over the world. I think it's just something to keep our eye on, and especially in countries where you're doing business. But healthcare dependencies, the reduction in travel, not coming back right away. We thought it was. Real estate. There's so many properties that are vacant. And I talked to two different big companies yesterday about return to workplace, and they're struggling. This is not going to happen in short order, if ever. I say ever. At some point, it probably will, but it's going to take a while.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think we will never work in the office structure the way we used to pre-COVID. We're going to have a hybrid situation.
Yes,
I think from
we
now
are.
on. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's jobs that are essential. Like my neighbor, he's a scientist for Raytheon. He can't work from home. He's got to be in a closed environment in the office for now. And so there's a lot of that. If you're in Apple's research department, you're not going to work from home. So, but there's a lot of us that can do that very effectively. Mm-hmm. We just need to figure it out better because, IT departments are really straining to support work from anywhere models right now. Yeah. And also employees this has not been their familiarity, right? So they bring more risk. And again, we'll figure it out.
Oh, yeah. Well, and just the need for that tighter integration between the security people like us and the IT people, MSPs, vendors, in-house staff if we're going to do remote work, what's the right security model? I mean, we seem like everybody likes to use remote desktop. Remote desktop has become the number one access point for cyber criminals. kind of toe to toe with phishing attacks. So we can't do remote desktop like we used to. We got to, do so. How do we get that appropriate balance?
Right. Right. Another one I thought was good that this made the list as well is just governance.
Yeah.
And, this attitude of do as I say, not as I do has no place in the workplace anymore. Not that it ever really did. But what I mean by that is if you have a policy, a procedure, a guideline, don't just write it and issue it and hope that it's being complied with. Get out there and take a look at it and validate it.
Yeah.
And if it needs to change because things have changed, then change it. But when you've been victimized and your auditors come in, the lawyers come in, the SEC comes in, whoever, that's what they're going to look at. You said, or your insurance company, by the way, you said you agreed you were going to do blah, blah, blah. And you didn't do it. And because of that, guess what? We're not paying the claim. That's a big deal. So really understand, all of this. What is it you've committed to do, should do, and are you doing it? Big deal. Okay. Two more. These are good as well. I like all of these. Talent management. Man, every day we see, Chick-fil-A this morning announced that some of their stores are not going to be able to stay open because they don't have any people to run them. Wow. And that's one example. There are many. And then the other thing is service. Service is not as good as it was. And another one, supply chain. Supply chain is seriously suffering in a lot of ways. And it's going to drive prices up. It's going to drive availability down. And look at chip manufacturing right now. They can't make enough. And a lot of companies are getting into chip manufacturing business because they have to. There's so many. Now there's another freighter in the Suez Canal this morning that is blocking the canal. Oh my God. Yeah. It just never ends. So
that, and just add to the talent management piece, we're short several 100,000 cybersecurity workers.
Exactly.
So how can we do our job without the talent to get that job done? Technology.
I do have a thought on that. And that is that you're probably not in the near term going to find them outside of the company. It's highly competitive. They may or may not have the skills you really need. It's going to cost you a lot of money. They don't want to move. So I think that a company today, identifying what skills you need, what experiences you need, and then inventory among your workforce and determining whether or not you have people in the workforce that you could upskill, that you could train, that you can develop, that have an interest, and start investing in them and get them on board. While you're recruiting on the outside, sure, you have to do both. But I really think that that's what we have to do is nurture and develop from within, as well as thinking that you can just hang a job posting and 1,000 people are going to apply. Not going to happen.
Not anymore. No.
And the younger generation, they don't seem to have the same kind of interest in some of the deep technical IT stuff that we've seen other generations want to be involved in. So anyway, excuse me, it's a big deal. And then the ones that you do have, take care of them. Continue to develop them. Get them certifications in SANS Institute and others where you're constantly refreshing, updating their skills so that they keep you aligned with where this is all going.
Yeah, that to me, Steve, is part of what you had a slide earlier that referenced Davos and the need to, the purpose of the enterprise is no longer just about profitability, and it's recognizing the stakeholders go beyond the owners, and the stakeholders include the employees, the workers. And this slide both on the talent management piece and the culture piece speak very directly to that.
Yeah, they do. Culture, why is that important? Culture from a standpoint of societal. So, we do things differently in Japan than we do in England. Okay. If you're going to do business in both those locations, then you probably ought to understand the variances in the culture and how you really get business done. But culture also is in the organization that you run or that you work for. What is the culture? And culture drives everything, I think. And so you want to have the right tone, the right incentives, the right rewards, and you want to have the red lines that say, guess what? We're not going there. We're not crossing this line. And that actually gets into something I'm going to cover in a moment, which is ethics and values and why and one reason that I think it's so important is there are no secrets anymore. If you think there are, I can sit here all day and give you examples of people that are in jail and some of them were CSOs and CISOs in the last 3 to 5 years. So what are some of the risks that being more specific? Climate change, I pretty well covered. Human error, we've got to continue to invest and train our workforce because, as hard as they try, they're not perfect. None of us are. And we need to be continually educated. And then the other thing is, if we click on a phishing email, okay, we made a mistake. We're in a hurry. I wasn't trained. Don't punish me. Help me understand how to get better.
Yeah.
Mental health. This is on here not because I mean mental illness. Mental illness we have to deal with. Mental health is an issue today that is becoming a huge issue in society. We're overwhelmed. We can't deal with everything we have to deal with. And we don't know how to. And we're stressed. And so I talked a moment ago about, I think, a shifting obligation in the workplace where especially your human resource folks have got to start to pay more attention to what's going on with employees and find ways to help them and find ways to help them understand that it's okay to have a conversation when something is not right. And get ahead of it. Don't wait till it becomes a workplace violence situation. Cybersecurity, alignment with the organization, alignment with what's happening in the world, and convergence. And I come from a convergence model, and I saw it work during our attacks. But I think it's equally or more important that convergence means that the functional areas that need to work together and partner and speak the same language have to do that. And so maybe it's, the CSO and the CISO report to the same boss. That's not a bad model because there's certainly different expertises in physical and logical security. So anyway, I think that's just so important going forward. Cryptocurrency, BitLocker, blockchain, all these terms, it's really a distributed ledger that is encrypted and that you're able to share transactions on with those that you want to share them with, and a way of storing assets. It's digital cash. So start to get more familiar with those terms because it's here. The bad guys have already well adopted it. And companies now are buying cryptocurrency in the event that they have to pay a ransom. Oh, think about that. So then the other thing that's happening is you buy it, and then how do you store it? How do you protect it? Who's got access to it? So again, a whole different thought process. And there's a country, was it Salvador, that just went to a cryptocurrency for their economy? It's like, are you kidding me? It's so volatile, the values. I just don't know how you could, but anyway. Lack of candor, ethics, and values. You know what? You're always better off telling the real story. There's a way to tell it. but don't wait and wish you would have. I've seen it happen many times. It's not a fun thing. Work from anywhere. I think we all know what I'm getting at there, and one thing I do worry about as it relates to that, and we could make a long list, but it's the blurring lines between, the commingling of business and personal data. And oh my God, that's just not good. So when I talked earlier about IT helping, the workers better structure and set up and protect data, that's a big, big deal. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't do it, but it's a big deal. And so take a serious look at it. Skill shortages we covered, pandemics, I don't think I need to get into that. Ransomware, espionage, those two terms I put together for this reason. I know you all know a lot about ransomware, but it's also being used for espionage. So think about somebody that penetrates your networks and systems and gets in and exfiltrates data and encrypts data. And maybe you get it all back. Maybe you get some of it back. Maybe you get none of it back. Or maybe they sell it to somebody else who then takes it and uses it for other reasons, maybe for competitive intelligence or more. Now they've got all your employee database. They've got your org charts. There's a lot of companies out there today that are willing to pay good money for that. Now I'm hearing Nigerian gangs are approaching individuals, going through social media and approaching individuals in companies and offering them money just to click on something to allow them to get into the network. Wow. So another one I'm very worried about is moving from the infrastructure and network layer up to the web application layer. Websites are no longer being used just for marketing. And so how well protected are they? I don't know. But I do think that, that really goes with the cloud. And I think as it relates to the cloud, it's probably where we're all going to have to go. But we're going to have to go with the big boys who really invest in it to do it right as best they can to then better protect your data.
Yeah.
Because
go ahead, sorry.
It's just not a business that most companies need to be in.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Stan.
Well, I was just going to add to that you can move the infrastructure into the cloud. You're still responsible, however, for making sure it's configured appropriately. I mean, in our cybersecurity news of the week, it's like at least every couple of weeks, I'll run across a story and post it on a leak. Somebody's forgotten to put password protect, a bucket, configuration, whatever. And now that information sits there wide open on the web waiting for anybody to find it. And oftentimes very, very, very sensitive information.
Yep. I think on that note too, how do you build your systems, your networks? And segmentation is a huge issue. It just we saw it in Colonial Pipeline. The OT systems not fully integrated with IT. That was good. That helped them a lot. And I think we'll see a lot more of that in the design. We have to. Zero tolerance, from a standpoint of, I don't care who you are, prove it to me before I allow you in.
That's right.
That's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's doable. And I think we're going to see zero tolerance in the executive order from the White House on the government agencies.
Oh, yeah. Well, CISA yesterday came out with new guidelines for zero trust. And all, and it's actually, pat myself in the back. 40 years ago, 35 years ago, Jim Williams and I at MITRE actually built the first zero trust model for a communication system prototype. But that whole way of thinking has been out there for 40 years. We're just finally pulling it into day in, day out practice.
Yeah, now that we're desperate.
Yes, exactly. Now that we're desperate. Yeah.
Another one, workplace violence, I threw in here, and then I put the insider.
Yeah.
I talked a little bit about the insider. It's people that you've allowed in, you trust in some form or fashion, and they have access. But when it comes to the insider and what happens, There's two ways. One is naivety, accidental, unintentional, something went wrong. The other one is deliberate, and we're seeing much more deliberate.
Yeah.
Can you still hear me good, Stan? Okay.
Yeah. No, you're fine.
And there's a lot of reasons for that, but that's something else we've got to keep our eye on. In the interest of time, I'm not going to get too deep in that, but I could. And then technology as it changes. I've got a great link to a story at the end of this that I'll share with you that I just read yesterday about AI and machine learning, and it breaks it down in kind of in layman terms about what is it and what is it we need to understand, and how are we going to adapt it, and how are we going to work alongside machines.
Mm-hmm.
It's really a good, timely story.
Mm-hmm.
And then, another one we've kind of taken off of our list was terroristic threats. The Taliban victory, I'll call it that, is inspiring everybody who's got a jihad agenda. And we're going to start to see more of it with followers. And I'm just worried about it. Mm-hmm. So anyway, these were some quotes. Stan has seen them. I really like them. I wanted to share them with you. The first one, to me, really hits on data. And I think when you think about cybersecurity, data protection is really what it's all about, right? It's being able to, optimize and materialize and create value in the data that we have that maybe we weren't able to do as much with before. It's going to give us a competitive advantage, keep us in the game, all of that. But data is what this is about. And if we don't get serious about it, again, we're going to wish we would have. The other one here on what boards need to do, thinking about systemic risk, which we already covered, I think what we're going to start to see in litigation is that if you haven't really thought about your third-party risk and made an effort to close that hole, that gap, that's going to be a problem as well, including on your insurance coverage, which, by the way, is premiums are jumping through the roof, and requirements on insurance coverage for cybersecurity are changing by the moment. In fact, if you don't have MFA in your program, you're probably not going to get insured.
Yeah, I find it
and then
nice.
I like the last one here too about culture.
Go ahead. Yeah.
And go ahead, Stan.
I was just going to say, I'm happy that insurance companies are beginning to put these kinds of requirements on their policyholders. As a practitioner in the field who sees businesses and other organizations regularly getting breached because they don't have MFA, and you look at Microsoft's analysis that MFA blocks over 99% of breach accounts. It's like, what are you thinking not to have MFA? Do it. So right. I'm pleased to see that.
Good. Good.
Yeah.
As usual, we're on the same page.
Yeah. Yeah. One other quote I want to add, just because it's wrong. Something Bill Gates wrote about 30 years ago in Business at the Speed of Thought. He said, how you gather, manage, and use information will determine whether you win or lose. He said nothing about how you gather, manage, use, and secure information. That's how this shift in our thinking has come to us so quickly, so out of left field. We weren't thinking about this stuff 30 years ago. It's now, oh my God, we got to be thinking about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, good one. We're kind of getting to the end here, but I wanted to share this as well. Just a few more thoughts on, what's on the horizon, what are companies doing, what can we do? I talked about building an intelligence program, and I include threat hunting in that. But I also think let's start to consider accountability. Who's got what accountability in the organization, and making sure they understand what that is and what the expectation is around it.
Yeah.
Another one that's not that difficult to do is do the assessment and determine what what looks like a normal activity in your network traffic, and then create bells and whistles that go off when something happens that's not normal. And maybe it doesn't mean it's a bad thing, but it means that you just ought to take a look at it. Because otherwise, there's no way you can monitor 24/7 all of the traffic and all of the activity. And there's good companies out there today that offer technology that can help you do this. Talked about the White House, SEC, government services expansion. I think we're going to see more. CISA and NIST are really helpful. They're probably two of the best, public sector, private sector programs that are out there for cybersecurity right now. AI, it's not going to be optional. The bad guys are already figuring out how to use AI to attack us. We better figure out how to use AI to counter it, if nothing else. But we'll do more with that. And then I talked earlier about running your business in the dark. What if the internet goes down? What if you just, my God, is it possible to go back? And we did it at Sony when we had our attack and we went dark. We ran the business for weeks with no internet, with no email. But it wasn't easy because we were in 50 countries at that time with thousands of people all over the world.
Yeah.
But it's a whole different way of thinking and planning. Data privacy laws, oh man, we have 4 states now that have it. We've got different countries that have it. We've got the federal government playing with it, but not really doing, creating a federal mandate on it. It'll change, it'll get better, but for now, it's tough to comply with, and really, I think you just have to kind of figure out the fundamentals and do your best.
Well, that's where,
And then transference of risk.
I think us and the attorneys have such an important role to play. So
Absolutely.
sort all this out. It's not either or. It's not the silos. It's
Right.
confluence.
No, you're right. Yeah, we need help.
Yeah. So do the attorneys.
Yeah. So I promised earlier that I was going to give you guys some links. This is some good stuff, and I think it will be available to you on the website.
Mhm.
There's one I wanted to mention is Discord, and a friend of mine in a company I consult for gave me a demo on this the other day, and it's free. And he took me, once he registered, or I did, we went to Project Owl, and Project Owl are these people from all over the world that are feeding it. It's kind of like Wave if you're driving down the highway. But it's real time, it's photographs, it's videos, it's somebody who's there saying, hey, here's what I just saw. But it's situations and incidents that are happening that, like Afghanistan, the collapse, Kabul airport. These guys were reporting on this real time. You can go to that site and really, and I'm not saying it's 100%, please. This is when you're getting real-time data, you have to understand it's probably 50% accurate or less, but it can be really helpful. And then if you're in the chat, you can actually communicate further and drill down. So it's something that you might want to just play with and have a little fun with, but it's pretty interesting idea, and I liked it. And some of these others are really to help you if you want to build a risk or a risk analysis program or intelligence program. Every 2 weeks, there's a combination. Emergent Risk International and Factal actually do a free webinar. And that is amazing what they put out. They've been really hitting the COVID problem worldwide. They've got some really phenomenal stats on what's happening. They get into travel, they get into other types of risk as well. So, and there's a lot more of them out there, but I just wanted to mention those. And then I told you that I came across a really great story on machine learning and artificial intelligence. There is the link. I think you'll really enjoy it. It'll be a great reference for you. And again, it'll be available on the website. And Stan, we're at 53 minutes into the hour. How'd we do?
But man, you nailed it. Really good Steve, this was truly great. I'm looking forward to getting this article. It'll possibly be in this week's Cybersecurity News of the Week that Secure the Village publishes every Sunday. That goes out to, good God, several thousand people a week now at this point. So you can expect this article to be in Sunday's newsletter. This was great, Stephen. You know, again, as I said at the beginning, as we were just jumping into this, when you look at risk the way you just laid it out, I mean, we're looking at risk big picture, and then of course it breaks down into all the little pieces that you have to pay attention to. But then those pieces interlink together.
Right.
This was really well done, helping to lay out what all those pieces are. And we can see, I mean, AI, just another illustration. The fact that the cyber criminals are already using AI, the fact that there's some good security companies out there that have introduced machine learning and AI into their defense structure. One of my favorite metaphors is the story of the Red Queen in Alice in Wonderland. You know, that you got to move faster and faster and faster just to stay where you are. And that's where we're at here. Another metaphor is, if you're old enough like you and I are, Steve, to remember Mad Magazine, it's spy versus spy. You know, this is that new world that we're in. To say this has been great. This is a tour de force, if you will. I'm going to take the screen back and run it out through. Okay, so some of the other things we're doing around this. We've got several programs. This one is a monthly program that's, what is it, the second Thursday of the month. If any of you out there, and I'm looking at some of you on the participant panel, are involved in workforce, we've got a workforce working group that meets monthly to move the agenda along. It's the workforce working group that the video I showed earlier came out of a grant from the South Central Coast Community College region to us for that video, and one that we did for them as well. We're just starting a community engagement working group that's all about what do we do for residents, families, individuals, parents, those groups to reach out. And one of the things we're planning there, it'll come sometime in first quarter, probably late first quarter, is a special webinar event with Nicole Perlroth, the author of This Is How They Tell Me the World Ends. If you don't know that book, I highly recommend it. As a tour de force is the only language that's appropriate. She's written that kind of book about the world we live in and the struggle, cybersecurity.
She's also really great in an interview.
Yes, yeah. Also, so just be ready for that. We've got a happy hour that meets the fourth Tuesday of every month. Managing the intersection of IT and security. That's such a challenge just by itself. Yeah, how do we get IT and information security working together, appropriately integrated? Our meeting this month is all about the Center for Internet Security controls 1 and 2 on information, on inventorying your systems. So we've got that program. We've got a monthly financial services cybersecurity roundtable. And this month, we've got someone from CISA who will be speaking on financial threats that CISA is seeing, this cybersecurity and infrastructure agency. And then, and I've highlighted it in blue, Thursday, October 21st, we're going to have our next annual conference. This started as Cybersecure LA, then it became Cybersecurity SoCal, and now it's Cybersecure America, as we've gone national because of virtualization. That happens the day after our first annual golf tournament. We have never had a golf tournament before. We're going to celebrate Cybersecurity Awareness Month on the link. If you're in the greater LA area, please plan to join us. You can be a sponsor. We would love that. You can be part of a foursome. Either sign up a whole foursome or sign up as an individual, and we'll pair you, or quadruple you, I guess would be the right phrase, if we're going to put you into a foursome. And if you don't golf, plan to come for the reception. at the end of the day, it's going to be at Moore Park Country Club out in the Simi Valley area. So definitely, please plan to do that and take advantage of our resources. Steve, you gave us those links. They're going to find their way onto our website. We've got a very active resources library. We keep adding to it. It's searchable both by person, by organization, and by topic as well. Connect with those of us in the on the village square. Steve's there, I'm listed there. A lot of people I see on the who are attending today are listed on there. And we're going to be turning that into a real membership system over the next few months as well, to get much more interaction possible, to allow that conversation, Steve, that you and I talked about as so important, to let that go on in virtual space, and certainly attend our events. We're working, the community engagement working group is working on an app for residents that'll be very directed towards, here's things to do to protect yourself and your family, and here's things to know, to keep in mind. And it'll be reminder based so that every day you'll get a reminder just to help you move your thinking in cybersecurity. And that's a critical thing. If you haven't frozen your credit, do that as an individual, a homeowner, a family, very important to do. I'm also the author of a book, Up Above Politics, The Agnostic Patriot, A Citizen Searches for the Soul of America. It's not about right and left. It's really about, it's the Declaration's statement of equality. The more we live that, the more the blessings of liberty. That's part of the foundation of the preamble to the Constitution, the more that manifests. So it's as I say, it's up at that level as well. Here's contact information. Don't hesitate to reach out to both Steve and me, Steve or me, on this. Steve's at steven@bernard-global.com, and I can add Stan at securethevillage.org. So that kind of wraps it up. Any final thoughts? And Steve, just from my side, thank you so much for a very illuminating, elucidating conversation.
Well, as you know, I'm a firm believer in Secure the Village and what you do and what you offer. And I'm really proud to be a part of it. And as I said in early planning here, I do think it's so important to look at risk in its totality, and then figure out from a cybersecurity standpoint, how is it relative? And that's what I tried to do today. So hope everybody enjoyed it.
Super. Well, I certainly enjoyed it. I'm a special case audience, if you will. Really good. Thank you so much. This will be up on the website within the next few days. We'll have this all up there. So, if you saw it, I'm talking to the audience, you enjoyed it, tell your friends as well. We'll be back in a month with another of these. And until then, again, Steven, thank you so very much. And we are adjourned.
Thank you.